Yo guys, welcome back. My name is Nathan, and today I'm going to be discussing the best draft fits for the 2020 draft for every NHL team. Now, the 2020 NHL draft is going to feature a lot of different surprises, but in today's video, I'm going to be trying to link one different player to every NHL team based on where they are likely to pick and what they would likely to end up picking with. So, who do I see as the best fits for every NHL team and your favorite team right now in the 2020 NHL draft? Watch till the end for all my picks and rankings, and of course, hit that subscribe button if you're new. Now, starting us in alphabetical order with the Anaheim Ducks, and to me, the best fit in the 2020 draft for the Anaheim Ducks is Jamie Drysdale. Now, especially with where they pick in this draft, most likely to be around the 5 to 7 area, that's a team that I think is pretty plausible to get Jamie Drysdale, and if they're in position of the 5 to, again, 7 or 8 area, if Jamie Drysdale is available, I think they end up picking him. Besides, like, Josh Mahura, there really is no other defenseman that are even close to the level of Jamie Drysdale, especially in that prospect pool. Now going on to the best fit in the 2020 draft for the Arizona Coyotes, and right now they are pegged to either pick top 3 or have that pick sent to New Jersey in the 2021 draft, but due to the lottery being kind of crazy right now, I'm just going to assume that they pick 10th overall, and I think the best pick for them would be Jack Quinn, or at least the best fit for them. Although, again, it's hard to project what they'll need in a few years' time, Jack Quinn is a perfect player for the Arizona Coyotes, a guy that can create goals for himself, and on the power play is an absolute madman. Yes, Arizona could need some other players, but goal scoring is their biggest need, and Jack Quinn is one of the best goal scorers of this draft. Now going on to the Boston Bruins and the best fit for them in the 2020 draft, and for that, I'm going to go with USA defenseman Tyler Kleven. Now, Boston doesn't have their first round pick, but they do have their pick in the second round, which will probably be around that 50 to 60 area, and I think they do go for a defenseman in this draft, and Tyler Kleven is a guy that, for me, is pretty controversial. There is some things in his game that I do like. His physicality is strong, and I think the defensive game, although raw, does have potential. And although I don't see too much upside in him, if there's any team to develop him into a strong top 6 guy, for me, that is the Boston Bruins. Now going on to the Buffalo Sabres and their best fit in the 2020 draft, I'm going to go with Canadian Cole Perfetti. Now for Buffalo, they're set to pick around the 7 to 9 range, and I think Cole Perfetti is a pretty great player in that area. For the Buffalo Sabres, they've been in dire need of a second line center, a guy that can command that top 6 group, and I think Cole Perfetti behind Jack Eichel will be a pretty nice fit. Although he doesn't have elite skating, he's a super smart player, super mature, and is already such a great player on offense and on defense, I think, too. Now going on to the Calgary Flames, best fits in the 2020 draft, and when I say they could do literally anything, they could do literally anything. So it's hard to pinpoint what they would want in this draft, but I think they would go for defensemen. Right now they're pegged to draft 16th overall, and I think a pretty great fit for them is Braden Schneider. Now, I think he appears also a couple other times throughout this video, but a guy that has some supreme defensive potential, really solid in tightening gaps, and a guy that in his defensive zone is very strong. Also, I think has some pretty decent offensive upside, but that's not exactly why Calgary's drafting him. It's the defensive prowess that makes him one of the top prospects. Now going on to the Carolina Hurricanes' best fit in the 2020 draft. Right now they're pegged to pick with Toronto's pick, which will be 19th overall, and I think the pick would be Rodion Amirov. Now Amirov is one of the strongest two-way wingers of this draft, a guy that is supreme on the left side, also has some great offensive potential, I think, as a Russian. And just thinking about the left side, the top 6 side of Andrei Svechnikov on the first line and Rodion Amirov on the second line, although it would take some time for that to actually happen, Amirov is excellent and I think is a perfect player for the Canes. Now going on to the Chicago Blackhawks, and with them picking 9th overall, I think the best fit for them is clearly Yaroslav Askarov. Now goaltending wise in their prospect pool, I mean, you have Kevin Gravel, I guess, but there's really nobody else, and now if Robin Leonard traded, Askarov is the obvious choice. Now going on to the Colorado Avalanche and their best fit in the 2020 draft, I have Swedish winger Noel Gunler. Now I really doubt that he's available at 27th overall, but for Colorado will be an absolutely amazing top 6 guy. Although potential-wise, his floor is very low, the ceiling is very high. When you factor in the speed, the skill, and the all-around game, to me, it's all there. Now going on to the Columbus Blue Jackets and the 15th overall pick, I think the best fit for them would be Dylan Holloway. Now I think it's between Dylan Holloway and Dawson Mercer, but Dylan Holloway is a guy that I think perfectly fits that Columbus mold of being just a great overall player, solid physicality skills, great height, but also has some great kind of shifty hands that go underrated in my opinion. Although it would take a little bit of time for him to really transition into a top 6 role, I think he can be that. And if they are able to unlock those offense skills, he could even be a second line center behind Pierre-Luc Dubois. Then going on to my favorite team, the Dallas Stars, and at this spot, I think Dallas will select Dawson Mercer. Now, this is kind of daydreaming because I don't see him being available at number 22, but the possibility is still there. One of the most pure skill players of this draft, solid all-around game, is a guy that's already been one of the best wingers in the entire QMJHL. Now going on to the Detroit Red Wings and their best fit, and it's Alexis Lafreniere. That's it. Now going on to the Edmonton Oilers and their best fit for the 2020 draft, I have German winger John-Jason Peterka. Now Peterka is a guy that I think is greatly suited for that Edmonton role. A guy that can do a lot of different things and also has some pretty great offensive potential. I'm not as high on him as some other people. I still have him in my first round, but you already have Leon Drysdale there, and he could definitely be on the left wing of his line. Just imagining John-Jason Peterka, you have Leon Drysdale on the center, and then who even cares on the right side? You have 2 Germans in the same line. That's friggin' sweet. Now going on to the Florida Panthers, and at this spot I was kind of tempted to pick Kaiden Guhle, but I think Braden Schneider is just a better defensive fit for the Florida Panthers. Obviously at number 14 they would love to take Jake Sanderson, but I think Braden Schneider with the defensive game he has isn't quite as high for some people as Jake Sanderson, and at number 14 I think would be pretty realistic. Now going on to the LA Kings, and just like the Anaheim Ducks, the pick will be Jamie Drysdale. Now, Jamie Drysdale, just like the Anaheim Ducks, is a guy that will perfectly fit the LA mold. A guy that offensively has so much potential. And I like the LA's defensive prospect pool more than Anaheim's. You got guys like Hale Clegg, Tobias Bjornfoot, and Sean Durzi. But I think Drysdale is the only player throughout those guys that has #1 defensive potential. Can be a great offensive guy for LA, especially on the back end, is exactly what they need. Now going on to the Minnesota Wild and selecting right now 11th overall, I think the best fit for them would be Anton Lundell. Now Anton Lundell to me is a top 8 prospect in this draft at the very least, and for Minnesota to get him at that spot would be an absolute steal. I think he's a guy that can potentially be a top 6 center, maybe even a #1 guy, and I don't think he needs to be this 80-point offensive player, because I think he's a perfect player to put alongside Kirill Kaprizov, can just sauce him the puck and also score quite a few goals too, and being one of the best defensive players in this draft, Minnesota just automatically loves him, as they should. Now going on to the Montreal Canadiens, who are pegged to select 8th overall, and I think the best fit for them would be Cole Perfetti. Now, I'm going to be honest, there isn't one guy that's a perfect player for Montreal because they already have so many great prospects in their system, but I think Cole Perfetti would be a pretty great player for them. Can score goals, can be a power play machine, and can just be a top 6 center for them. Although they might not need him as a center, he can transition to wing, which I think if Montreal selects him, will be his path. Now on to the Nashville Predators, and with the Preds, they're selected around 18 to 20, so kind of in that range, and I think the best player for them and the best fit would be William Wallinder. Now he is a defenseman, but I think for Nashville, a defenseman is what they will go with, and Wallinder to me has one of the best ceilings of his entire draft. 6'4", great frame, but is super offensively minded and has a great skill set on him. If he can kind of iron out some of those decision-making issues, that's a player that I think can be a top 4 guy and one of the best defenseman on Nashville, which is definitely saying something. Now going on to the New Jersey Devils, and I kind of cheated here by picking 2 players, but they kind of tied for me. One being Jamie Drysdale and 2 being Alexander Holtz. Jamie Drysdale being the offensively minded, skilled beast for the New Jersey Devils that I think he can be a #1 guy for them and be brilliant. But you also have Alexander Holtz, in my opinion, the best goal scorer of this draft, and him alongside a guy like Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes would be absolutely perfect. Now going on to the best fit for the New York Islanders, and for the Isles, they don't have their first round pick, and they don't even have their second round pick, so judging what they could have at the 80 range is kind of difficult, but I think they will go for defenseman, and that D-man will be Alex Cotton. Now, the overrated WHL defenseman is a very interesting prospect. May birthday, so he wasn't really too old in the last draft, quite young in fact, but he went from 11 points last year to 67 with the Lethbridge Hurricanes this year, a guy that substantially improved, and for the New York Islanders, around the 80 range will be a pretty solid pick in my opinion. Now going on to the New York Rangers and their perfect fit for the 2020 NHL draft, and selecting around 13th overall, I think a center would be the most perfect fit for them, and I think Jacob Perreault is a guy that would be amazing for the Rangers. Now defensively is a problem, but offensively is one of the more quick, smart players in this draft, I think. Excellent shot, excellent goal scoring ability, but also is a supreme playmaker. If New York is able to develop him right, could be one of the best offensive players of this draft, and could certainly be worth a top 15 pick. Now going on to the Ottawa Senators, and to me, their best fit, just like the Detroit Red Wings, is Alexis Lafreniere. I mean, Quinton Byfield is right there, but also Alexis Lafreniere is right there. Now going on to the Philadelphia Flyers, and I think there's a lot of ways that Philly could go, but I think their best fit will be Swedish defenseman Eamon Powell. Now round 25, I think would be a little bit early to select him, but still would be a solid pick if it ends up happening, because with Andre, there is some supreme ceiling there. Excellent skater, excellent agility, a guy that can get away from pressure super easily, although I definitely think he's one of the more raw defensemen in this list, still a guy that can become a top 4 guy if developed right. Now going on to the Pittsburgh Penguins, and without their first or second round pick, they're going to have to get a little bit creative like the Islanders will, but I think the defensive trend will continue and they will select Michael Benning. Now Michael is the nephew of Jim Benning, Canucks GM, and with Michael there is some serious upside there. Although it didn't really work out too great with Derek Pouliot, even though he does have some pretty big IQ issues, I think, especially in the defensive zone, has some great offensive skills, and the talent is there. If there's going to be any team to turn him into something, it is the Penguins. Now going on to the San Jose Sharks and their best fit in the 2020 draft, and it will of course be a defenseman, and my pick will be Ryan O'Rourke. Now they'll use Tampa's pick around that 26 range, and I think Ryan O'Rourke is the best fit for them. A guy that has pretty much grown on me over the past few months, very defensively sound, one of the more underrated in this draft, has some solid offensive potential, but to me is one of the premier two-way defensemen of this draft, and for San Jose, could be super useful in the coming years. Now going on to the St. Louis Blues, and their best fit for the 2020 draft, I think, will be Finnish defenseman Tappi Niemela. Now Niemela is one of the more, I would say, less interesting prospects because there's not a whole lot going there, but he's just solid in a lot of different areas, solid defensively, solid offensively, pretty solid neutral zone guy as well, I think. Although I don't really see a top 4 bona fide guy in Niemela, he could become a really solid 5th defenseman, I think, and for the St. Louis, even at 30th overall, I think they definitely take that. Now going on to my second favorite team, the Tampa Bay Lightning, and without their first round pick, they're going to go in around that 50 to 60 area, and I think the best fit for them will be QMJHL defenseman Lucas Cormier. Now Cormier is one of those guys that already has such a pedigree, but also is one of the more high-end guys, I think, of this draft. A guy that I think can be a top 4 defenseman if developed right, and again, we've seen this with the guys like Tampa that they've drafted. If anyone's going to develop them right, it's going to be Tampa Bay, and I think Cormier will be a pretty great player to work around. Now going on to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and just like Tampa, they don't have their first round pick, but they do have their second. And I think they could go and honestly have a great fit with one of the more underrated defensemen of this draft, that being American-born D-man Eamon Powell. Now Powell was just so solid in the USDP this year. Didn't put up amazing numbers like a Jake Sanderson would, but defensively I think can just go so underrated. Gap control is really solid in my opinion, and in the defensive zone is just not allowing anything. For Toronto, I think would be a super smart pick. Might not be a top 2 guy, but maybe as a 4th shutdown defenseman will be super valuable in the second round. Now going on to the Vancouver Canucks, and they traded their first round pick to New Jersey, but because they had to make the playoffs for that to happen, and we might not even get the playoffs, I'm just going to assume that they get that 17th overall pick, and I think one of the best fits for them would be Swedish defenseman Helge Grans. Now Grans, I think, in terms of the Emil Andre, William Wallander, and Himspear, might have the lowest ceiling, but also has the highest floor. And I think for the team like the Vancouver Canucks, could be super useful. Pretty solid size, great overall play, and very solid in the defensive zone at times. Could be a guy that turns into one of the best two-way defensemen of this draft. Now going on to my third favorite team, the Vegas Golden Knights, at the 28th overall pick, and I'm going to be honest, honest, folks, if you like safe picks, you're not going to like this next one. But my best fit for Vegas is Jeremy Perreault. One of my favorite defensemen in this draft right now, still my third best defenseman in this draft. A guy that I think has the potential to be up there with a guy like Jamie Drysdale as the best D-man of the draft. But there's also a big chance that he never even touches the NHL. In his own zone IQ-wise, sometimes he just doesn't even try. Sometimes he looks absolutely lost. But then he'll go up the ice, rush completely, use his fantastic skating and brilliant puck skills, and just score a goal by himself. There really is no middle ground with Perreault, but I think Vegas is a team that can iron some of that out and just let him fly on the power play, which I think at his peak is what he will be. Now going on to the Washington Capitals, and just like the Philadelphia Flyers, they're around that 25 to 30 range, and my pick for them will be Emil Andre. I think for the Washington Capitals, Grons would also be super interesting, same thing with Wallander, and I think they will go for defenseman, that guy being Andre though, I think will be a super interesting fit for Washington. They already have a lot of interesting mobile defensive guys on that team, now and in the past, and I think Andre will be a pretty solid player there. Might not be a top 2 guy ahead of guys like John Carlson, but certainly a guy that is depended upon and offensively can score a lot of points. Now going on to our last team in the Winnipeg Jets, and just like the Minnesota Wild, the pick here will be Anton Lundell. Winnipeg is set to pick 12th, and if Minnesota somehow skips on Anton Lundell, I think he would be a perfect fit for the Winnipeg Jets. One of the best defense players, if not the best defense forward of this draft, could fix a lot of problems on Winnipeg. Might not score like Mark Scheifele can, but defensively can be an absolute stud for them. But those are my picks for every team in the NHL and their fits for the 2020 draft. Of course, with this video, if you want to help out the Grav gang and join us, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell if you haven't already. Comment down below all your thoughts, what you agree and disagree with, and who do you think is the best fit for your favorite NHL team. Of course, make sure you share this video, get the word out there, and click on this card for all my hockey prospects content right in one playlist. My name is Nathan, and I'll see you guys next video stream. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.